support the government on any firm steps it takes against terrorism. But we'll certainly keep giving wake-up calls to this government that you can't fight terror with such a soft policy.
All right, let's now move beyond terror, because that's not the only example of drift that the opposition accuse you of. Much more importantly, they say that the loss of appetite for economic reform is another example of drift. And let me go through the checklist for you. Not only is disinvestment on hold, but 2 years have passed and you haven't been able to increase the insurance caps. The government talks of permitting FDI in retail when it goes abroad, but it does absolutely nothing at home. Banking reform, pension reform are talked about and forgotten. Labor reform is mentioned but not acted upon. What is the problem?
Let's be very clear. Firstly, our definition of economic reform is different from theirs. Our definition of disinvestment is different from theirs. So there has to be a qualitative difference in approach.
But you are even pursuing disinvestment as per your own definition.
Let me explain. There have been major economic reforms and movements. We may, for every BHEL we have not done, we've done telecom sector caps. There's a lot of opposition there. We did it when we thought it right. Now, even
insurance
in disinvestment,
failed, 2 years have passed.
Insurance is in the pipeline. It is not failed. It is not rejected.
It's
it is
2
not.
years late.
No,
it was promised in 2004 July.
There are several. The Insurance Regulatory Authority has made recommendations requiring a lot of changes. That's also taken time. In disinvestment, let me remind you, we've had strategic sales of NTPC. We've had for other ONGC, IPCL. We haven't done as much as we'd like to, because ultimately...
You admit that? You admit that?
But certainly we'd like to do more, yes.
Okay.
But we'd like to do it along with a consensus of our allies. We don't want to, want to do it with the democratic spirit.
Let me
bring it
Arun Jaitley. Arun Jaitley, looking just briefly at disinvestment itself, you too didn't have a completely easy time sailing on that particular sea. HPCL and BPCL failed, NALCO failed. Surely disinvestment is a problem for any coalition government.
There is a difference. First of all, our definition of economic reforms is very close to what the definition of economic reforms from 1991 was. It's post-2004 that there is a policy paralysis. It is not economic reform. Secondly, the NDA government...
Can I interrupt? You're saying they talk more, deliver little.
No, I'm sorry. They talk in the reverse direction. They are unable to deliver. And I believe that any growth process in India today is entirely entrepreneur-driven, not policy-driven. Except for the decision to modernize 2 major airports, there is not a single significant economic decision they've taken. From 1991 to 2004, we had reasonableness in tax rates. It's a high tax government. You are going back to the old system. And I'm afraid if this process continues, it'll start reflecting in future growth.
I want to pick up on something you said, which connects very much with what Arun Jaitley just said also. You said that, in fact, you can only proceed as per your allies and their commitment to reform. The problem is that, in fact, your allies are not committed to reform at all. Hang on, let me take you through it. The left don't believe in disinvestment of any shape and form. Nor does the DMK, nor does the PMK, nor does the RJD. Right? The CPI is opposed to FDI in retail. The CPM will not permit greater FDI insurance. And the Congress party itself doesn't like the petrol price hike. The problem is your allies and your own party simply don't like economic reform, full stop.
3 quick points. It doesn't matter whether what you think, the Congress thinks, the RJD thinks, the DMK thinks.
The whole country
What matters is the CMP. That's why we have a CMP. A. B. The CMP specifically recognizes... I'm answering your point about disinvestment. The CMP specifically recognizes disinvestment, but with a different face. The real problem with his government and ours is this, and that's the real point to be addressed. His government has believed only in one-sided equity, growth equity. How fast the size of the cake can be made to grow, and that they haven't made to grow too fast either. We believe equally in distributive equity.
Let me put
how the cake is to be distributed.
Let me put that
growth with a human face is the agenda, and CMP recognizes disinvestment, including disinvestment of non-navratnas in a certain manner.
Let me give you a moment to put that to him, because you have an excellent point. If you just reduce the rhetoric a bit, he says that, in fact, they've gone through reforms of a type that benefit the poor rather than the rich. He hasn't named them, but he's talking about the National Rural Employment Act, increased spending on health, increased spending on education, and even the Right to Information Act. Those are reforms that matter to real Indians as opposed to the ones you indulge.
Let me first of all say this. What Dr. Singhvi says is, in fact, empty words which mean nothing. Today, you have growth for equity. You've had these yojanas and schemes always. You amalgamate them and call them Bharat Nirman. These are change of nomenclature. You had food for work programs. You change them and then say this will be the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme.
But it's more extensive. It covers more people.
Well, when it is implemented, the proof of the pudding will be the eating. I am reserving my final comment for it. All that I am saying is that today you have a situation where you inherited a 8% growth rate. You inherited an India with great entrepreneurship. You inherited India on a fast track, and eventually you are cowed down by a situation where the Prime Minister does not have the authority to take economic decisions. We all know it, that the Prime Minister's office, from the leaks that we get, the Finance Minister are all sulking. They are not allowed to decide anything.
In which case, gentlemen, let's take a break at that point. Let's come back and actually tackle the real issue that lies below the charge of drift in government. Is the Prime Minister's authority lacking? Is there a problem with his style and possibly with his character of leadership? That's the subject in a moment's time. See you after the break. Welcome back to India Tonight. Is the government adrift, or is the BJP being prejudiced and unfair? Gentlemen, in a sense, what underlies the perception that there is drift in government is the belief that Dr. Manmohan Singh lacks the qualities to be a truly effective Prime Minister. Mr. Singhvi, even a friendly paper like The Hindu, and I'm quoting Harish Khare, who is perhaps the most friendly journalist you could have, has written, Dr. Singh needs to seize control of his own government. The Prime Minister must reinvent himself. That's a damning indictment.
No, I think, you see, these are all, we are a free country, free press, and we must respect different views of different people. I have nothing to say on somebody's comment. But these are periodic assessments, periodic views. Tomorrow, 1 week later, a different person, a different newspaper have a different view. We at least are fortunate that we do not have huge elements of a so-called parivar who actually remote control the previous Prime Minister or the previous government. We are fortunate in that we actually do not have persons like Govindacharya.
Let's pause before we bring the
Dr. Manmohan Singh is a decent, straightforward politician, and the fact that his decency and straightforwardness is a liability, that's the problem, then I can't say anything more.
Arun Jaitley, let me slightly convert his point into a different one. All Prime Ministers go through bad patches. Do you remember Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 98, 99? Do you remember after Gujarat his public hand-wringing when he was helpless in the face of Modi's intransigence? I mean, Dr. Manmohan Singh seems to be going through a
there's a
similar
fundamental
phase.
difference. Mr. Vajpayee was the natural leader of his party. Dr. Manmohan Singh is not. Secondly, Mr. Vajpayee had 50 years of politics behind him. Thirdly, if Mr. Vajpayee planned 50 decisions and there was opposition, his natural leadership was accepted. He was the last word. He could at least implement 40, able to implement nothing. Dr. Manmohan Singh is indeed a very decent man. But then, if decency becomes a charter of not indecisiveness, if decency becomes a process by which DMK as an ally says, don't disinvest one company, and the decent man says, I won't disinvest any, then of course we need decency, but that can't be a substitute for submissiveness.
I have only two comments to make. One, we all know the natural leadership of Mr. Vajpayee and the innumerable sequential continuous flip-flops. Number two,
another person.
no, I'm only answering the point he made. Number two, Dr. Manmohan Singh is a person who takes a decision, who believes in a democratic spirit and temper after consulting everybody. That is the assertion of a democratic spirit.
So this is very interesting. By implication,
it is not in any manner being held hostage.
But then by implication, you're suggesting that the earlier decision to disinvest was taken without consensus and without consulting everybody, because when the consultation happened, he backed off.
No question of backing off. It's on hold. We are consulting again, and you will see shortly that we will come out with a comprehensive policy which will remove all these irritants.
Let me put it like this, Arun Jaitley. Even in your time, I'm talking about the Vijay Dashmi speech of 2001, the Sangsad Chalak and the RSS publicly declared on a platform that anyone opposed to disinvestment, and in fact not just disinvestment, to all Western forms of development, had to be removed from positions of influence. I'll read to you what he said. जो देश को विदेशी विकास पथ पर चलाना चाहते हैं उन सबको पदों से हटाना पड़ेगा. That embarrassed you hugely.
Well,
the same thing's happening to them.
I'm afraid that may be a part of somebody's philosophy. They're entitled to have it. But at the end of the day, nobody said what the economists said about Dr. Manmohan Singh. He's in office but not in power. Nobody said what the business standard Mr. Nainan said about Dr. Manmohan Singh. It's about time he asked himself the question, why am I here? And frankly, when the government started, our comment was there are alternate centers of power being created. Today, after, if we have a midterm review, the question is he at all a center of power?
Let me put it like this. The problem truly is this, that Dr. Manmohan Singh may be the administrative head of his government, but he is clearly not the political head. And as a result, not only is he dwarfed by the much larger presence of Sonia Gandhi, but in a very real sense, he is perceived as her puppet and nothing more.
That's completely wrong. there is actually a lot of problem in the BJP's whole perception for the simple reason they can't digest the fact that here you have a very efficient division of labor. You have a party which is at the peak of its power because it has strong political leadership.
When you say an efficient division of labor, what's the judgment by which, what's the criteria by which
the criteria? He is the Prime Minister of the country, he runs the cabinet, the party and the party president do not interfere in any manner in the government running.
But on a second, what happened over the petrol price hike? You protested on the streets against your own government.
And what happened? And what happened, Karan, can I ask you? After that, the government of India still said that we cannot increase or decrease.
I think
they didn't change. The state government changed. And one more thing, Arun. We tend to have short memories. We forget that Mr. Vajpayee and his government had much worse situations because 90% of decisions were taken in Andhra Pradesh with Mr. Naidu, who happened to be a similar coalition partner.
You wanted a chance to rebut.
I think the real test was when the cabinet was appointed, after taking oath, every minister did not walk up to the Prime Minister, but walked up to somebody else to thank the person concerned. Every minister appeared on television to thank somebody else for inducting him. The Prime Minister is not free to choose his cabinet.
For that discourtesy, is Dr. Manmohan Singh to be blamed? Surely every minister should have gone to the Prime Minister, but didn't. It was discourtesy.
I think more than discourtesy, it was a realization of realism.
Okay, let me put it like this. Your real criticism, as I understood the point you were making, is that Dr. Manmohan Singh fails as Prime Minister because he's not a politician. But that is a criticism I put to you that politicians and journalists would make. Would the country share it, or would the country feel a huge sigh of relief that we have for once a highly qualified technocrat rather than a petty politician running the affairs of state? The country might view this quite the other way around.
I think denigration of politicians is one factor. But you can't have a Prime Minister who's not held in the kind of awe, who doesn't have the last word as far as decision making is concerned. Leadership at the end of the day is not the art of postponing decisions. Leadership is the art of taking decisions. Leadership is not the art of awaiting a consensus.
Let me put it like this, Abhishek Singhvi, whatever Atal Bihari Vajpayee's failings may have been, he was always considered a supreme politician with a perfect sense of timing and an uncanny knack for bridging disparate positions. Those are the very qualities Dr. Manmohan Singh doesn't have. And I put it to you that to be a Prime Minister without being a politician is to be unfit for the job.
Unfortunately, I believe that the very so-called virtues which the BJP is flaunting on Mr. Vajpayee are the vices. We tend to have short public memories.
We have to rather than the ex-Prime Minister.
No, you just asked me a question about the ex-Prime Ministers, therefore I have to respond to both. Don't forget, public memory is short. The same Mr. Vajpayee, the same 50-year politician with the natural flair for politics, was known for his complete flip-flops, lack of sincerity, lack of adherence to any single stance. He would change in the middle of a policy.
Back to Dr.
Now, Dr. Manmohan Singh. I think if you talk of improving politics, you talk of having better people, you talk of having civil society joining politics, you talk of civil society entering and having a partnership in governance, then you must have people like Manmohan Singh.
But there's a problem here.
And Manmohan Singh,
can I interrupt? We're talking of improving politics. What Dr. Manmohan Singh is doing is eschewing politics. That's the problem. You can't be PM without being a politician.
It is only when you have that strength of character, identity and integrity that you have the strength to take the hard decision. And you take a decision without political compulsions coming in the way.
You need people with a vision. You need people with decisiveness. You need prime ministers. You don't need cabinet secretaries. You need finance ministers. You don't need revenue secretaries occupying that job.
Let me put it like this. At the end of the day, Dr. Manmohan Singh's supporters and his party remain loyal to him. When Mr. Vajpayee finished as Prime Minister, the Sangsad Chalak was the first to criticize him. He said, we don't think he did anything great. He cut himself off from everyone. He didn't communicate with anyone. He could have done a lot more. He didn't do it.
That may be an opinion, but the BJP
solid.
Well, yes, the BJP contested that statement, and the BJP stood by Mr. Vajpayee even at the end of the day.
And the Sangsad Chalak didn't change his view.
I'm sorry, but the question today is that as far as the prime ministerial abilities are concerned, where are you leading the nation to? When we say drift, it is not merely economic paralysis. It's not merely softness on war on terrorism. How is the left behaving? How are the allies behaving?
Nothing but adjectives and words.
Don't respond to adjectives then. Respond to me instead. Where is the government leading the country? Let me quote to you the comment made by your allies, the left, on 2 years of the UPA government. After the passage of 2 years of the UPA government, the people are yet to realize that their material condition has changed for the better. If after 2 years your own allies believe that you haven't done anything and nothing has improved, that's terrible.
That's a sphere in which there is always scope for improvement. People for people to realize that their conditions improved is an ongoing process.
But he's not talking about minimal improvement. They're saying no improvement, full stop. People haven't realized things have changed for the better.
The left is supporting us because it thinks that we can do some good to the country. It also thinks
The
that we
left
can
is
do some
supporting
good
you
things.
to keep them out of power.
No, that's not necessarily so because...
Arun Jaitley is the guarantee that the left
well, in
stays on
any
your
case,
side.
on that judgment, we are better than them.
But I can
We're
tell
better than
you,
them, because we are
political
preferable to them.
negativism of the left or the UPA cannot pull them on indefinitely.
So how long do you give them? Very quickly.
Well, according to me, it's not relevant how long they go on. What's relevant for the country, in what direction are they taking
You
the country?
chickened out. You
Let
chickened
them-
out.
let
I'm
them have
afraid
their
at
good
that point,
thinking and
when
dreams,
both my
sweet
guests are
dreams.
no longer quarreling but smiling, we've come to the end of this very amicable assessment and debate. And if you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.